Welcome to another episode of the Make Mental Health Matter show. I am your host, Kelli Melissa Reinhart, and I am very excited for you to either be back or joining for the very first time. This show is really all about bringing resources, people resources, and or sharing experiences, stories to really know that we are not alone as humans in this thing that we call life, whatever we have been through or what we might go through in the future. Oftentimes in the mental health space, we don't know about all the resources that are out there, or we have this idea that we're the only person that is experiencing, whether it's depression or anxiety, or maybe you have a substance use disorder or abuse or any of those types of thoughts as related to suicide. And September is National Suicide Awareness Month. It is also National Recovery Month, as you have heard me talk if you've been watching this month. And the guests that I have been bringing on, we have had lots of just conversations about how our mental health can be affected no matter what experience we go through, but then also really understanding this place of hope, this place that we can get to where we're either one of my guests, we talk about laughing yoga. The other one, we talked about really technology and mental health. And my guest is no different today. We're going to talk about his journey and what he's been through, what the recovery of what he's been through, and then also how he puts that into creativity. So I'm going to introduce my guest for today, and you'll understand what I just said. So Micah is a writer, artist, musician, speaker, and carpenter. He's written a book that details his process of transmuting trauma into healing using art, nature, and connection, entitled Evolution of Revolution: How to Push with Love, a superhero's origin story as a sci-fi, psych thriller, screenplay, and graphic novel called The Silent Scream, and started a nonprofit organization called All Range Combat that combats internal brain not connecting with my mouth today, internal trauma and all ranges beyond ourselves using sound healing, group therapy, martial arts, and weapons training. So without further ado, Micah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I'm like, my brain's not connecting with my mouth today, but that's okay. So tell the audience, all other than what I just shared, a little bit more about you, your journey, and why you now do what you do.
Well, I guess it would be easier to start about a year and a half ago. I recently divorced from my 12-year marriage and had to start over. And I had to start over with essentially no money and no place to stay. So I had to move back in with my parents at 39, which is not something that you really want to do at the age of 39, especially if the environment was not exactly supportive and healing when it comes to trauma and all of that, or frowning upon the idea of divorce, really. So the shame and the guilt was kind of surrounding me through my healing process. So I had to really reflect on my own childhood trauma, my addictions, my depression, and cope with the fact that my life just kind of fell apart, everything I was building for the last 12 years. And I had to do that essentially on my own without really anyone there. So I reached out to people on the internet and met with a lot of people through Zoom and connected as much as I could and made friends. And they have helped me essentially. So, what I did with all of this pain that I had to kind of reflect on and come to terms with and accept, I created a book out of my process, which is a very simple process that I do regularly to try to bring me back from any type of negative thought cycles or any type of depression and connect with myself again, connect with God, connect with nature, connect with creativity, especially with self expression. Because there's a lot of things that we struggle to express when we're in that mindset, that depressed mindset. Like we are alone or nobody else will understand where we are, even though it's not true. It's just a feeling. So I used art and I wrote a screenplay called The Silent Scream, which is essentially a superhero's origin story set in sci-fi and horror, and it basically is a raw and realistic approach to trauma without any type of filters. And my goal essentially was to incorporate the idea that anyone can be a superhero. You don't have to be like a god or anything like that, as well as kind of shine light on all of the perspectives when it comes to trauma, not just pain. And then after that, I decided it would be best to try to create some type of group that I can then spread support for other people, other artists and educators that also are striving to do the same thing. Just reach people and show them that there's a positive way to deal with trauma, a more constructive way. So that's what all range combat is about, essentially.
Wow, I mean, lots of different avenues to be able to really share your experience, but then also for people to access, whether it's through the group or the book or through the movie or film, which sounds really, really interesting. We actually have our annual film festival that is coming up at the end of September. And so I'm not really, I would assume that it would be pretty cool. I don't really like horror type movies personally, but I bet it is really authentic, especially as you talk about trauma.
Mm, yes, yeah, and I understand that. It's growing up, I always enjoyed the horror uh, movies. It's just something I've always enjoyed watching, as well as the superheroes and action stars and stuff like that. So I can completely understand how that genre is more of like a niche genre. So I'm trying to blend it nicely so that it kind of can appeal to if you are into horror or if you're into more of the sci-fi and the fantasy, because that's something I also grew up loving was like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. Just love the fantasy realm. So I wanted to combine the idea that humans can be superheroes as well. They don't need to be super, I guess, in a way. And I always imagined it would be cool if you're like watching a horror movie and the people are always running away and scared and not naturally because they don't want to die. But then they have somebody that just like starts you know fighting back and they do well against it. Uh, and it's because they are trained. They've trained their whole life.
Yeah, I love that. I am curious, so you might have to show me where I can watch that if it's available. But I love that just message, right? Is like we do, I mean, horror films, right? It's supposed to make you a little bit scared, and then you're always like, "Ah, run, why aren't you running?" Right? But I love the concept of fighting back because when you talk about trauma, especially, is that sometimes we know when we experience trauma, but then other times our brain has kind of shoved it down. And then, like you said, is you had to really face that trauma that was coming up for you when you shifted into this new phase of your life. And I think that's when some people are like, I can't do it, right? Like as the victim mentality of running away, we're like, I can't do this. But then if you shifted into that superhero, then you're like, yeah, I can take this on. So that sounds really, really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the idea essentially. That's just what I want to. I want to empower people because I kind of had to draw inspiration from superheroes. So just to get through my own experience. Uh, so I created my own superhero just to kind of inspire me.
That's amazing. We are with my nonprofit, Make Mental Health Matter. We have this Warrior for Mental Health t-shirt, but we're going to be creating a mascot for it. And so I love that you created, and I love superheroes also. My son was I think every single superhero for years and years and years, but we've kind of gotten out of the superhero phase, but I haven't. So we're good.
That's understandable. I mean, we really don't ever grow up, do we? I mean, for the most part.
Yeah, we just shift in and out of different phases.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
So,
something that
oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say. That's something that I also had to kind of reflect on with my trauma and my reflection and acceptance was that uh, there was a lot of childhood experiences that you kind of push down and, like you were saying, you kind of push them away and try not to face them or you ignore them and repress them. And that was something that was really difficult. So completely understand that perception.
Yeah. And what was really helpful, that was actually kind of what I was going to circle back to. So, I'm glad you mentioned that. And so what did you notice that other than art that you talked about, like what were the other things that really helped you move through that trauma so that you didn't have to reshove it down?
Mm. So the one thing that I really drew upon was music, because listening to music and just kind of allowing it to kind of pull out the emotion freely, so that I could feel it wholly and then process it, let it go. And it wasn't just like a one shot thing; it was a continuous thing. So I was constantly listening to music and feeling, and a lot of times crying, and I would dance to the music, just interpretive really, and let my body kind of go with it. And that was another really freeing feeling, was just kind of letting go of inhibitions and just cry or dance or feel anger, just feel anything that came up, and then just kind of feel where did it come from and reflect on it afterwards, and then breathe, because breathing was very important afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally talking my language because music has been my entire life. My mom was a music teacher and then dancing. And after I lost my middle sister who died by suicide, like dance was our thing. And for a long, long time, I didn't choose to dance anymore. But music, like you just said, was that one thing that like drew me back. And I was like, yeah, the more you can, like, listen and process and, it's like, I look on my Spotify list and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I knew where I was then and then and then because it's all the different groups of genres."
And it's funny too because of the association you have with certain songs. After you get through it, you start to listen to it again, and you're in it. You realize that there's a certain emotion that you had attached to that song, and it might not be as impactful now. So it kind of gives you that perspective of growth and processing.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how the brain, depending on where you are at in your life and how you whether you have or haven't processed the trauma and really started going about on that healing journey, how the brain shifts you in and out of those moments. And it is I um the phrase that I'm thinking of is when you're sad, you understand the lyrics, and when you're happy, you understand like the music part. I always reflect back. That's probably not exactly how you say it, but something like that.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's like kind of like you feel the music, uh, and then when you're listening to just the lyrics, it's reminding you of that feeling of sadness when they're speaking to you. So it's almost like it brings you back in time to that feeling or that experience of sadness or grief. And then when you're out of it or you're, I guess, processed it, now it just becomes like invigorating to your body to just kind of dance to the music and let it flow through you.
Yeah. Like definitely dance parties are like my favorite thing to do. So
Yeah, I have a lot of private dance parties in my room, just just to keep myself going.
yeah. So we are going to go to our quick first sponsored break, but once we get back, we'll chat a little bit more about your experience and then also touch a little bit more on the film because I want to know a little bit more. So we'll be right back after this quick sponsored break. I lost my middle sister, Carrie, to a completed suicide on February 20th, 2017.
My story, however, it isn't unique. I am a domestic violence survivor and a recovering addict. For 14 years, I was in active addiction, and because of Kelli and the work that she does and the opportunity to have my voice heard, I was able to stay clean and sober and have hit a year. I'm still here, and if it wasn't for Kelli answering my call the day that I thought I was going to take my life.
Curious, and I know that I've heard a lot in the BIPOC community, it is very hush hush. It's like one of those things that you don't talk about. Like you literally feel like it's not a conversation you can have. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
First, shout out to Kelli because I'm glad that she asked the question. I researched you before I went on your show and I saw how real and authentic you were. And I just appreciate the question because it is different and we have to have tough, courageous conversations. So yes, I always say I'm a triple diversity threat. I'm a Black woman with multiple disabilities. Now, I'm not really a threat, but to other people, I may be because people fear the unknown and what they're uncomfortable with.
Kelli's passionate commitment to mental health awareness is a beautiful thing. It's clear in her social media posts, it's clear in the resources that she puts together, in the activities that she provides, her collaboration with organizations, and the consistent way that she continues to deliver a message encouraging people to understand that they can share openly and to break the stigma around mental health. Kelli's topics cover children and adults, talk about things that we can do as a community, things that we can do individually, and her website is packed with information and resources and all kinds of contacts that you can use to reach out, whether you're dealing with something yourself or you're looking to help somebody else who is struggling. I encourage you to check it out.
And like that, we're back. If you happen to be joining us for the Make Mental Health Matter show, thank you so much for jumping on. Make sure you go back and watch the first part of this. My guest, Micah, and I are chatting about his experience through life, really finding healing in creativity and art and filmmaking and support groups and a nonprofit that really helps combat traumatic experiences. Hopefully I said that all correctly. So I'm curious about, so that you mentioned some support groups that you offer, and we also started talking about the film that you have created that's really about it's kind of horror, but it's also superhero. And where or have you put it out so that people can watch it?
Yeah. I currently have it as a graphic novel. So you can download the digital graphic novel, which would just be the introduction to it until I publish it into a paperback. And then I'm working on the animation for it. So the name of it is The Silent Scream. And the address or the website is thesilentscreams.com, because it'll be multiple, it'll be a series of graphic novels and animation.
Wow, that's cool. And I actually had that ready to go. So it's thesilentscreams.com.
Yep.
And so it's the graphic novel and then it'll be in the animation. That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm currently working on that at the moment.
That is amazing. I mean, it's so like for me, it's really cool when people take their experiences and then put them into different artistic formats for people, whether they want to read it or watch it. I'm sure that both of them will be amazing once they come out. So you'll have to let me know.
Thank you.
I also want to talk about really your nonprofit that you started. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So I started this nonprofit called All Range Combat, and right now it's in the building phase. So I'm spreading awareness that there's multiple forms of healing that are available. And the goal essentially is to reach out and connect with people that are struggling with depression or addiction or childhood trauma, and kind of help them, empower them, and show them there's a way to process quickly through this experience so that you can become more than you are, basically back to your original self. And then not only process the trauma, but then empower them with weapons training so that they can defend themselves and others around them, which would make the community safer. And do this in a way that allows them to promote themselves and become financially free.
Wow. So I had a couple of thoughts that just popped into my head. Being the founder of a mental health and suicide awareness nonprofit, I commend you because the nonprofit space is not the easiest, but it just comes with its own challenges, but it is very rewarding. So just even the thought process of creating and starting a nonprofit is a feat in itself. So congratulations for that. And also, I love how you are mixing the martial arts. And the reason why I say this, I somebody that is on my team, we were kind of talking about different phrases or taglines that we want to utilize on the website. And one that I found was it was like supporting the fighters. And that actually triggered her because she's like, when you're actually in, like, say, a domestic violence situation or somebody that is like fighting for their life, she said those words trigger her just hearing fighter. But I like the way that you shifted to being able to defend yourself and giving them the actual tools to be able to do that. And a lot of it, I mean, yes, it's physical, but it's also that mental aspect of being able to defend yourself.
100%. You hit it right on the head there. So when it comes to self-defense and martial arts or any type of combat, it always starts in the mind. It's anybody can remember a certain routine or dance, physical movement, and be effective. But when it comes to the moment when they need to use it or utilize that training, if they're not mentally there, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you've practiced. So you have to have that mental fortitude first. So the one thing that you learn through the training or through any type of martial arts is a mental endurance. It builds you up from the inside. It gives you that self-confidence that you are growing as a person. And I feel like the more we can kind of get people on board with that, rather than the concept of fighting, because as a culture, I feel that we are so focused on the combat aspect of martial arts and, just kicking the crap out of each other, and that bravado or that brutish way of looking at martial arts. It's the opposite of what we need to be focused on when it comes to martial arts or self-defense. because it has nothing to do with harming somebody. It has everything to do with empowering yourself and building your mind up and your spirit.
Yeah, my son, so he is 9. He has been in MMA since he was 4, and we had originally started due to behavioral outbursts, and he recently, this last year, got his black belt, and so that was a really, really big. I mean, he was 8 when he took the test, and then turned 9 a couple months later. But I was just, as a mom, because at first he wasn't practicing, like we weren't even training to do the black belt, and I was like, okay, I don't want to. It was 8 hours the full test, and I was like, I don't want to waste 8 hours if you're not really going to be committed to getting this. And something clicked in his head, but I saw such a different kid in that test, and I was like, wow. And then I reflected back to when he was 4 and how far we had come with the confidence, and not just like you were saying, is not just like fighting and doing the movements. Like it really, I love this school because they also focus on the mindset aspect and teach them different words and what those mean as related, and focusing on the emotional part of it too. So, yes, I feel that wholeheartedly, especially as a mom that has a kid in mixed martial arts.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. It's one of those moments where you're just so proud because they develop, they grow so much when they work on that mindset of empowering and giving them confidence, especially emotional control. Because usually with physical outbursts or violent outbursts, it has everything to do with anger or some type of emotional processing that needs to happen. So that the martial arts was essentially there to kind of help facilitate that, get that emotional uh, deregulation, I guess, to process and create a nice flow. I think
Yeah.
that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, and I mean it translates again into adulthood, right? Like we can also learn these skills as an adult. It doesn't always necessarily have to be kids, although we see more of the behavioral or emotional outbursts generally earlier in life, but we still kind of see those in adulthood too. And the question that's popping into my head, and you are more than welcome to not share or share as much as you want, I just like to ask the questions, but was there an experience that you went through that, like, this wanting to defend yourself and giving those tools to people, why you're really focusing on that aspect?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There was a multiple times when I was younger where, because I was always quiet and timid and just smaller than people, and there's been multiple times where I would want to have some sort of outburst, like an angry, violent outburst, instead of just processing the experience and understanding it. And that kind of triggered me in a way when I was younger to hide myself, kind of like isolate myself when I would have emotional deregulation. And that became such a habit or a coping mechanism. So when I'm older now and I kind of accepted my own emotional irregulation, um, and I didn't want to isolate myself anymore, I wanted to share myself. It kind of opened me up to my love for martial arts because when I was younger, I always loved it. I would wrestle regularly, and I loved boxing and wrestling, and I always wanted to do martial arts, but I always kind of shied away from it because of my emotions. And as my regulation kind of became more common for myself, or I became more balanced, it was going hand in hand with my kind of my joy for martial arts and practice and pushing my body. Even though I'm much older now, I don't feel like it's ever too late to kind of start doing something you love to do, uh, especially if it's physical and it pushes you mentally and emotionally. So this past year and a half kind of sparked that love for martial arts again, and it brought me to kind of push myself to a new level and kind of re-engineer myself in a way that was more honest and more pure of like what I love in life. And martial arts is one of them, besides any other type of art, but martial arts is definitely one of them.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I know when you were younger you did it, but then also reigniting that love for martial arts as you got older. And you did mention also like other art forms. We've talked about books and movie or animation and music. What other types of art do you do?
So something I've always enjoyed was drawing when I was younger. I started with drawing. Um, I would always draw just to kind of pass the time as entertainment. And then I got into painting as I got older because I had to, I guess, naturally evolve into some other type of art form. And I got into painting and I just fell in love with the amount of colors you could layer. And I did that a lot. And then I've got into sculpture, which I actually have an admiration for uh, sculpture and clay and creating any type of, I guess, functional piece of art, like a teapot or something. And I've been wanting to get back into that as well. So there's a I guess a number of things that I enjoy, uh, just kind of exploring, seeing. Plus, I love working with my hands, so pottery is another thing that kind of lets me do that.
That's awesome. And I know like a lot of people, they may or may not think about it, but art in whichever form you do is really good for your brain and your mental health. It brings out that creativity aspect, whether you're good at it or not. I am a stick figure drawer, but I can put a layer, like layers of color. And I have found other types of painting that have worked, the like paint by number and the paint pouring, which it doesn't take too much skill, but it really helps, I know, also process emotions, which a lot of people don't realize, whether it is scribbling on the paper or making something beautiful and extravagant. It just helps process emotions within our brain. So it's actually a really, really great form to help with mental health.
Oh, absolutely, I agree. I feel like anytime I draw, it immediately opens, I guess, the floodgate for me to just kind of vomit out any type of emotion or thoughts I'm feeling. So I'll start talking to myself even while I'm drawing, just kind of processing thoughts and feelings because there's no inhibition. You're just kind of focused on the drawing aspect.
Yeah. So good. So good for your mental health.
Oh yeah.
We are going to go to our quick last sponsored break, but once we get back, we'll chat a little bit more. So we'll be right back after this.
Host of Own Your Wellness, and you can watch my show on Mondays and Thursdays from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific on Achieve TV right here on E360 TV. Remember, there's more to health and wellness than broccoli and burpees.
My name is Adriana Morrison, host of the Health Revolution TV show. Join us Tuesdays and Thursdays live, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where our mission is simple: engaging conversations, elevating health and wellness, empowering transformation. Right here on the Achieve TV channel on E360 TV.
And we're back. If you happen to be just joining the Make Mental Health Matter show, thank you. Or if you've stuck around and watched, thank you so much. My guest, Micah, and I, we are chatting about really his story, his journey, how he has been able to shift trauma and really uses art forms to be able to help himself and help others. So, we've talked about the nonprofit, also the novel and the animation, also a little bit about mixed martial arts, how that is helpful for your brain, and then music, how music can also help with your mental health and just even physical artwork too. Um, so I'm curious, with all these things that you have going on, which I think is phenomenal. Who is and this is a question that I always get asked, and maybe you know specifically, but I'm curious, like, who are the people that you're really wanting to serve and help the most?
Yeah, and this is something that I have to think about so much in this past year. And it definitely is people that are like myself that have struggled with depression, have struggled with childhood trauma, have struggled with addiction problems, people that are recently divorced. Men usually need support and don't want to ask for it because it makes them feel like they're weak as men. And it's such a backwards way of thinking that I want to get away from and just encourage men to kind of reach out, because I have experienced so much in this past year and a half that I just want to kind of be there for them so that they understand that there is somebody that cares and understands all of the things that they have to deal with on a regular basis, and such little support is around.
Yeah, I mean, just men's mental health in general, I think is an important topic because we, unfortunately, as society, we still have the suck it up, get over it mentality of, well, be a man, right? I'm like, what does that even mean when people say that? Because being a man means you have emotions. It also means that you can be tough, right? Like, whatever gender you identify with, we all have human emotions. We all are human. That's what I just like to call everybody human, because we are. It doesn't matter what race, what gender, where you live, your demographics, right? Like, we all experience things that are similar. We just have different perspectives from those events. But I think it is still very important to have the conversation to be able to break down the stigma about men reaching out. That is a hard one.
And that's what I'm working on. I feel like if I can reach them through my groups, I have another group that I handle every week. Essentially, is just a meeting called Push with Love. It's a Facebook group that I offer for free just to kind of meet online through Zoom. And I feel like if we can just keep connecting with men, and if women are interested, they need to just find a way to be comfortable. And that's what I focus on mostly, is just allowing the space for them to be comfortable expressing themselves without judgment, and understand that there's plenty of tools available through experience and wisdom, and it's not complicated or difficult. It just takes us getting out of our own way as men.
Yeah, I mean, there has been many situations throughout my career in nonprofit and mental health that I have had multiple, like, men come into classes and really be vulnerable, which is so amazing to hear and experience, because it does, I mean, at those moments, it, like, we really, like, we're all human, right? Like, we all have these emotions, and it's even cooler when you can create a safe and supportive space for people to be able to show up that way.
Mm, I agree, and it's what's helped me through my past year here processing, was finding people that would allow me to have that safe space without judgment. And I'm extremely thankful that I have met certain people that have allowed me to join them and just learn from them.
That's amazing. Um, there was a question that popped into my head, and now I'm like, what? Oh, no, it was a thought. Because you had said earlier that there were times when aggression was the thing, and I noticed that you are very calm, and it seems like that you have been doing a lot of healing.
Yeah, and the irony is, I've been like this my whole life. This mentality, this calmness. Uh, so the the irony there is that even though people can be calm, you never know what's going on the inside emotionally. Because I always had trouble with anger and grief. It would be like a volcano, essentially, a buildup. And it was only because I was people pleasing so much. I wasn't setting boundaries or establishing any type of self love. And when you do that repeatedly, it builds up to the point of an explosion of anger. And I usually call it displaced anger because it is the smallest little inconvenient thing that is like the final straw, I guess. And that's really what my experience was I wasn't processing things or setting boundaries or expressing myself. And I was letting it build up inside of me to the point where it blew up. And it was so destructive and inappropriate or uncalled for. And it could have been so much easier if I just learned the simple fact that you have to express yourself and you have to set boundaries. You have to teach people where these boundaries are for yourself to make yourself comfortable.
Yeah. And I know I've had other guests on that we have kind of talked about boundaries, but anybody that doesn't fully grasp that concept, it can be internal boundaries or external boundaries. So whether it's boundaries inside yourself of like non-negotiables, like for me, I always make sure I have the time blocked off for my family on my calendar, right? That's one of my non-negotiables. Sundays are generally a non-negotiable for me unless I have to flex off of that, but I allow myself the boundary of being able to flex too. So that's kind of more of an external internal type boundaries, things that you will deal with or not deal with, right? Like who comes into your life or who stays in your life. Those can definitely be different boundaries. So if you're like, I'm not really sure what you're talking about with boundaries, and I don't know if you have a better way to explain boundaries.
That was very well. That was very well.
Yeah. And then so we're getting close to the end, but I'm curious if you have anything else that maybe we didn't chat about or some final thoughts for the audience.
Sure. If you are listening and you are struggling with boundaries, that is probably the most important thing I've learned in this past year. Besides taking a moment and pausing in that high energy moment or a trigger moment and pausing and breathing, besides that, setting boundaries is definitely the most important when it comes to self love. And as she put it, it's definitely an internal external thing. It's not anything more than that. It's whatever you feel you need to say in order to have that moment of self awareness and self respect, and just having the courage to express it. That's really all it is. And then it goes a long way.
Amazing. And if anybody wants to find you, I know we already had the silentscreams.com. Is there other ways that people can find you and follow you?
Absolutely. On social media like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn, it's just my name, Micah Yott. I'm available on all the platforms, so you can find me on any of them.
Amazing. And that is MICAHYOTT for those that are listening. And again, the website, it's thesilentscreams.com. Micah, this was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for being my guest today and just being really vulnerable.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of Make Mental Health Matter. I hope you got some really good nuggets out of that. It can be challenging when we have trauma in our life and how we kind of shift or move through those experiences into that place of hope. Sometimes we have to get really still and quiet and face whatever is coming up. And there are so many ways or modalities that you can express yourself or move through the emotions. So we actually talked about a lot on this episode. Music, art, it can be sculptures, writing a book if you want to write a book, or even produce a film or animation. There is also mixed martial arts, boxing, wrestling, right? There's all these different aspects of how we can help our mental health. I think the biggest thing for people to understand is that we all have mental health. It's actually our brain. So we don't all, though, experience a mental health challenge. And challenges can be depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, all of those, substance abuse, right? Like those are mental health challenges. And not all of us experience those, but at one point in your life, you may, because 1 in 5 Americans actually experience a mental health challenge in a given year. So it's more of us than you would think. And the ways that we can cope with these emotions that come through, there's so many different aspects. It doesn't necessarily always have to be professionals. I know we've talked about a lot of holistic, but it can also be the expression of different types of art and music and all those things. So I just love this conversation because this is a lot about what the Make Mental Health Matter awareness pillar is all about. It's all about the awareness of the other things that are helpful for your mental health. We even go into talking about films and travel. Travel can be good depending if you get stressed out by it or not. It could go either way. So no matter what, I want you to, if you need extra resources, I'm going to scroll it along the bottom here, makementalhealthmatter.org. That's the wrong link that I just put up. That's okay. It is Trusted Resource Hub. We have a Trusted Resource Hub on the Make Mental Health Matter website. If you need more resources, whether they are people resources, professional, holistic, coaches, products, life skills, there's lots of things that we are building significantly on there. So just go to makementalhealthmatter.org and click on the resource tab and go to Trusted Resource Hub. No matter what you do, make sure that you come back next Tuesday. No, it's not Tuesday. I go live on Mondays. My brain's not working today. So every single Monday, I go live at 5 p.m. Mountain Time on E360 TV, or you can listen on Dream Vision 7 Radio at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. every single Monday by simply saying, Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio. I will catch you on the next episode, and hopefully my brain functions with my mouth next week. Bye, y'all.